Hi, this is Yosef. Today I'm going to say I really liked Paul's video yesterday on that we help each other through relevance realization, and that is we've been talking about separately, kind of through the lens of Job, through Jess and Shari's series on Jess's channel, as well as other places like on Growl Country, with Nate. This is all about becoming mediators and being mediators for each other in the world. And I'm using mediators in a very, very general sense, not as someone who intercedes or intervenes, but essentially what Paul's describing, being facilitating relevance realization in meaningful ways, and the only way to do that is through trust and good vibes, I guess. But I do think there's a very big difference kind of in these discussions, because there's kind of one view that there's actually a couple differences, right? There's one view that you need a leader who's separate to manifest what's going on. And the only way for something to manifest in time stably is through that sort of leadership. There's also, like, putting that sort of leadership forward allows for something like a scalability. That's kind of in the having or the doing mode, right? And then there's the kind of the being mode people who would say, no, being a mediator is like learning how to be, kind of in a very Zen Buddhist way. And you don't try, you don't seek power, you don't seek leadership, you don't seek to become the mediator for others. It's just through your example that people look to you to mediate. And then I think Paul has a third part of this here, which is a part of, I think, the doing mode, but it's a little bit different, which is you need a final telos. You need something at the top of the hierarchy. That something sounds like, in his view, should definitely be a person, Jesus. Not just a person, a human, a person. Okay, a person who even for Christians at least is much human as divine, right? And so you need a physical person, an embodied person, to copy, and that's I think a very big part of Paul's philosophy, right? Everything has to be embodied in a physical sense. Estuary, don't watch my channel. This is a success metric, which I'm not sure about. I'm going to bring another view here. And this is going to be from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Sir Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Sir Rabbi Doctor, Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, Zichrono Livracha, in his book A Letter in the Scroll. It is no accident that the Bible takes marriage as a central metaphor for the relationship between man and God. For Judaism, religious faith is not mysterious. It needs no sacrifice of the mind, no leap into the void. It is precisely like the gesture of commitment I make in a human relationship when I pledge myself to another, whose body I can see, but whose consciousness must always be beyond my reach. My capacity to form a relationship tells me that though I can never enter someone else's mind, I can reach out beyond the self and joining my life to another, right? Allowing someone else to mediate for me. But this isn't shopping out. This isn't saying, like, I'm going to, let them, just control everything. It's you reach out beyond the self to another voluntarily, joining my life to another, create the things that exist only in virtue of being shared. Trust, friendship, and love. And I think there's a difference here between the transjective in the sense of reality and my consciousness meeting and forming meaning, versus, which is kind of, it's active, but it's kind of, my consent to it is passive. It's just happening. Whereas here, you actively choose to become transjective, right? So though I can never enter the consciousness, active and consciously aware and attentive, right? So it's not just like just like letting the algorithm guide me. um, or you're picking how you're attending to things and conscious of that. So though I can never enter the consciousness of God, I can still pledge myself to him in faithfulness, listening to his voice as it is recorded in the Torah, the Revelation, and responding to his affirmation of my personhood. Together we bring into being what neither God without man nor man without God could create. A society of free persons respecting one another's freedom. And this is a debate I've had multiple times here, that God had a choice in chose to create the universe, chose to be relational. This is to me the fundamental difference between the Trinity, between Christian Trinitarianism and Jewish monotheism, is that God chooses to become relational, and that choice is out of freedom, a freedom to be, not freedom from something, but freedom to become something, and that freedom obviously wasn't become relational in the sense of like creating more persons of himself for us, but freedom to create, the universe, to have a relationship with creation, with us, with the world, with all individuals. And yes, I understand that there's another side to that argument, which is that God has like complete free will. His love, his essence being love, basically makes him create, because you can't love something that doesn't exist. And while I appreciate that argument, I also think denying God the freedom ultimately denies us that freedom, that we, and this gets into right. This gets into how we the salience of the things, and how we understand the things that we're allowing to mediate our relationship with the world. For Jews, the idea of the freedom to be something is so fundamental. Go all the way back, Exodus and Abraham, and David. The entire, for us, what would be generally called like metanoia, really, goes back to the idea of teshuvah, repentance, right? Repentance, returning to God. Teshuvah, though, is different in that no one's dragging you out of Plato's cave and making you see the light. You have to choose. It only works if you choose. And choice is so fundamental to so much of Jewish thought. And for us, right, the highest. This also gets into framing, right? So people tell me these are the same idea, but I think the framing matters, right? So for us, the highest, the pinnacle of human free will is choosing whether one believes in God, one fears God, one not fears God, one is in awe of God, right? Choosing one's attitude toward God, not God. No, it's not that God exists, but choosing one's attitude toward God is the highest pinnacle of free will, as opposed to kind of an idea I've heard bandied about a couple times in different ways here, but essentially, I think the Calvinists probably put it the most strongly, from what I can tell, that Paul isn't going to try to convert me, but he's hoping that the Holy Spirit opens my heart to to Jesus or whatever, to Christianity. The idea, and not just as kind of like deterministic, but also that like I don't have that it's about God choosing me, or choosing to open me, show me, whatever, as opposed to me choosing God. And it's really both, right? I think that's we're just stress different sides of it. God has already shown that He wants me in Jewish thought because I exist, and my creating me, that means that I have a purpose and a mission in the world and have something to do that God finds necessary for history to take place, and that we each have that role. We each have some critical role to play, and God's already not only chosen. That's chosen me not as a Jew, separate, right? God created. The fact that I happen to be a Jew and therefore, in my being, I've also, God has also given me specific revelations to what it means to be a Jew. this is way beyond that. This is universal, right? This is, we all exist for a purpose. And no, right, so there's kind of like a bit of a predestination-y feel to that, a little deterministic feel to that. Because, do I fulfill my purpose or not? And like, I have a purpose to play in God's creation. But fundamentally, so God's already chosen, and I have to now choose whether to be faithful to God and to try to find that purpose and fulfill it. That's what my freedom is in this covenant. So to go back, for Judaism, morality is something else. It is covenantal and a result of a partnership, a marriage between humanity and God. A covenant is a mutual, like a marriage, is a mutual obligation that is neither a fact of nature nor a private and subjective state, but a bond created by a declaration. The word given, the word received, and the word honored in loyalty and trust. The reason that morality is covenantal is that only in and through such a bond do free agents redeem their solitude, creating between them a relationship that honors the freedom and integrity of each, while at the same time enabling them to achieve together what neither could achieve alone. The good that exists only in virtue of being shared. A covenant is what turns law into love and law into love. At the heart of Judaism, at its most audacious and least understood idea, is that between heaven and earth, between us and infinite power, between an infinite power and finite human beings, there can be and is such a relationship. Right? That God does not have to reduce himself to a physical human form to have this relationship. That law is a form of love. And love is a form of law. As he says elsewhere, yes, Judaism is about law and justice, but it's not really just about law and justice. Because law and justice are also part and parcel with love and compassion. And I think you see this a lot, actually. The term tzedek u'mishpat, or tzedakah mishpat, which literally mean righteousness, and justice are often interchanged freely with the words truth and love, or grace and kindness, compassion and loving kindness and compassion. These are interchangeable in the Bible in many ways. So certainly in the poetic side. I think there's actually a good argument that Moshe Meinfeld has made, that they're interchangeable almost everywhere. To be sure, Judaism is a religion of law and justice between human beings, because only where there is law can there be a just society. And Judaism is nothing if not a religion of society. But between God and man, there is a bond of love, and God giving laws that are compassionate, just, merciful and righteous, all together, all bound together, is an expression of that love. No one puts this more beautifully than the prophet Hosea, in a masterly pun on the name of the Canaanite god Baal. Baal is the ancestor of the fertility, is the ancient god of fertility. Seen in the storm, the thunder, and the rain, right? He's going to make the seeds grow into the field. Right, so notice, we're not using the seed metaphor here for God, potentially, or the Canaanites aren't, at least, right? And this is true for, right, the male fertility gods tend to be the elements, especially the rain and the storm. Baal is a good example, but I mean Marduk, and even kind of the but basically across Zeus, obviously. And then the fertility goddesses tend to be the ground, the dirt, the earth, Mother Earth, right? Because one is receiving what the other is giving. This is obviously not the mythology in Judaism. God does take a lot more metaphors from the masculine Canaanite gods. A kind of God is in the cloud and the thunder, or not in the cloud, but in the lightning. He's actually the still small voice. in Elijah, but certainly but in Job, right? He comes in the storm, and on Sinai he comes in the cloud. So it certainly uses a lot of that imagery, even though God is not Baal. But even more importantly is how God is not Baal in this way that Hosea is about to pun. Baal means Lord, owner, and by extension, husband is master, in a world where men ruled over women by force and domination. Hosea contrasts this with the relationship that to come between God and Israel. On that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband, Ishi, my man, technically my person. You'll no longer call me my master, Baali, like Baal. For Hosea, at the core of Baal worship is the primitive idea that God rules the world by force, as husbands rule families and societies where power determines the structure of relationships. Against this, Hosea paints a quite different possibility of a relationship between marriage partners built on love and mutual loyalty. God is not Baal, he who rules by force, but Ish, he who relates in love, the very word Adam used when he first saw Eve. And actually, he names her first, Isha, and then only then names himself, Ish, which you lose, I think, in the Christian English translations, because right, he's called, God is the one who names him Adam, but he names himself Ish, man, and he only could name himself Ish after he encountered Isha, the other, and realized what he was upon seeing her. The God to whom we speak in prayer is not the ultimate power, but the ultimate person, the other in whom I find myself. See? So, I want to find one more piece. Hold on. No. I'll come back to this book, because this book has a lot of stuff about the meaning crisis in it, to be honest. Yeah, it's putting a physical human person at the top of your hierarchy is dangerous. And potentially idolatrous, at least right from a Jewish perspective, and that's why there isn't one person to emulate. There's not one human person to emulate in the Old Testament. It's not because it's incomplete. It's because that's not the model. That's not the model it's arguing for. Abraham has, ups and downs, pros and cons. He's does some amazing things, and even kind of in the most positive takes on Abraham, for Jews, right? He epitomizes. He's one archetype, but he's not the only archetype. He isn't the ultimate archetype. He's the archetype of chesed, of loving kindness, and that's the trait that he also struggles with a lot, right? It's not that he's always loving kindness or chesed, also grace, whatever. Graciousness. It's not that he's always embodying and exuding this. It's something that he also struggles with. He asks for, he needs. He is a man of chesed, but that doesn't and similarly, Jacob is seen as the archetype of emet, truth, which is kind of funny because he does a lot of kind of deception. Deception is a big part of his story. And again, he's someone who needs truth, who seeks truth, who wants truth. For him, it's not that he's a man of truth and that everything he does is perfectly truthful. He's a man of truth because that's what he's seeking in the world. That's what he's struggling to find in the world. Note, right, they're not trying to find, there's no person on top of their hierarchy. For Abraham, it's chesed, it's this gracious loving kindness. For Jacob, it's emet, it's truth. For Isaac, it's the fear of God. It's yirah. And that's something, right, that he struggles. I mean, he struggles with that in another way because of what happens to him, and especially in the binding of Isaac, where it's like traumatic. It's too much fear of God, to the point where it's called pachad and not fear. He's no longer in awe of God, but it's really become like a terror, a fearful, and he has to struggle with that. And that's the irony of Isaac, right? He's laughter. His name means laughter, but it's laughter. His life is laughter and fear, right? It's this kind of tension. They all have their their attributes, but there's no one person. We don't try to emulate Moses. You can't emulate Moses. It tells us right, there will never be a prophet like him. Even the prophets can't emulate Moses. That's not the point. The point is to be you, to realize you as yourself as a person, and not some sacred secret identity self, because that's what he said. Like, morality is not subjective. It's not finding what I want, me and my personal desires, and I don't determine the world in my own eyes, each person doing what's right in their own eyes. That's not what we're going for here. We're going for something that's transjective but voluntary, where we recognize each other's freedom to be, but the meaning, the truth and the love and the truth. Well, okay. Out of the love and friendship that that come out of these commitments to God and to each other, we generate the meaning and the truth and the love. And more love, right? Yeah. So I think this is the problem with people putting human persons at the top of your hierarchy. There is no perfect person, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying that from a theological and metaphysical point, right? It's on purpose that there's no perfect person. Because if there was a perfect person, that would reduce us. That would reduce each of our personhoods. The only way to have unity of multiplicity is, at least from a Jewish perspective, we'll differ here. The only way to have unity and multiplicity is to not have a perfect person, to not have this is the perfect word, the perfect story, the perfect icon, the only way to God. There has to be as many ways to God as there are persons in the world. We each have a unique part of God, but by that I mean, I'm not saying we are divine. We each have a unique part of God's attention and purpose and telos, and we have to each find that for ourselves. And only when we all seek our own telos, our own personhood, in that transactive relationship with the divine, do we come together in unity around the divine, right? And this is my problem also with the circle and the line logo. I can't remember who's been using that, right? If God is the center, we're the circle, but there isn't. If we all are trying to get to the point on the circumference where the radius hits the circumference, where that line from the center hits the circle, then we aren't trying to be the radius anymore. To be the radius, we each have to be the point. We each have to be our own points. That is, that's what Rabbi, Dr. Lord, Chief Rabbi Sir Dr. Lord Jonathan Sachs. Was he a doctor? Maybe he wasn't a doctor. Whatever. Right, this is what he called the dignity of difference. We each have a purpose. Not one of us is elect. And we each have to help. And it's not just that. We don't only have a purpose, but we mediate for each other and all point toward the center of the circle. The center of the circle defines our relationship to it and all to each other. It helps mediate all that. But there is no perfect point on the circle. We all have to be on that circle. And that requires a different, I think it requires a different theology. Anyway, that's it for today. I should go to work.